YNA is a podcast that focuses on mental health and other aspects relating to what goes on inside of a person's head. We are by no means professionals in this field and only aim to make these conversations about mental health easier for the listener. Nothing we say or talk about is professional advice unless explicitly mentioned. If you seek professional advice or experience symptoms of an actual mental disorder, please contact a professional or visit your closest center for behavioral health. You are not alone.
What's up, guys? Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're looking for more of our content and merch information, be sure to check us out at ynamentalhealth.org. Keep an eye out for our skits and upcoming episode information. Feel free to reach out to us on IG. Our DMs are always open. And please remember, you're not alone.
Hello. Welcome back to YNA Mental Health. My name is Sina. I am the co-founder of YNA Mental Health, and today we're going to be talking about a very incredibly important and personal topic, depression. Now, this episode is going to be based around what is depression, symptoms of depression, understanding depression, what it's like to go through recovery and hope, the different types of depression, and basically just getting a better understanding of the mental illness and how are we going to deal with it, and how do we talk to somebody who is struggling with depression. Wherever you are listening to this episode, I greatly appreciate it. If you're at the gym or walking or whatever you're doing, I am truly grateful to be in your presence at this moment and for you to take the time to listen to me and just get yourself educated on mental health means the world. And I'm truly thankful for your support, and I'm truly thankful for you being here. Let's get started. So, depression is more than just feeling sad. It's pretty complex, and it's usually misunderstood. In fact, in 2021, about 42 million Americans received mental health treatment, with the rates of depression continuing to climb, particularly among young adults. So, what is depression? I know that a lot of people are saying it's more than just being sad, but how could a disorder be more than just sadness? So to begin to really understand depression, I want you to listen to this quote. For me, depression is like living with a fog over everything. Even when the sun shines, I can't feel its warmth. It causes symptoms that interfere with how you feel, think, and handle daily activities like sleeping, eating, or working. Now, depression will resonate with you. It's not something that just it just goes away. It's often a feeling of just constant sadness. Here are some symptoms to kind of get you into a better understanding of what are the signs of depression. So, like I said, persistent sadness, hopelessness or feelings of worthlessness, fatigue, lack of energy, physical symptoms like headaches or aches, and change in sleep patterns, or either too much or too little. Now, with depression, you may have all of these symptoms and you may only have one of these symptoms. I think that's what's so crazy about mental health disorders is one person could check all of these boxes and be depressed, and one person could just check one of these boxes and still be depressed. We all struggle with our mental health, but we all struggle differently. And it kind of just depends on environment, how you were raised, how you were educated, and just different things that play a huge factor in understanding A, your mental health, but B, what you're dealing with. And again, one of the biggest things I come onto the podcast and say a lot is don't self-diagnose, because when you self-diagnose, this is where we cause issues of giving us a misdiagnosis. And so if you are struggling with these symptoms, educating yourself is the most important factor, but don't allow yourself to make prejudgments of what you have and what you're dealing with, because you could be struggling with depression, but it could be something else that's making it more difficult. Like I've said in the other podcast episodes, disorders, they play hand in hand. They hold hands. Anxiety and depression hold hands. So when it comes to the levels of anxiety. You could have higher levels of anxiety but lower levels of depression, or you could have higher levels of depression and lower levels of anxiety. And sometimes you can have the same level of both disorders. They play a big hand in hand with each other. So now, one of the most important factors is the types of depression. So there are multiple different types of depression, starting with major depressive disorder, postpartum depression, seasonal affective disorder, and each one of these disorders has a little bit of a difference in itself. So something like major depressive disorder, a lot of people say, like, what is the difference between major depressive disorder and regular depression? And I asked some of the counselors in my practice on, like, okay, what is the true difference between these two? And for major depressive disorder, it's marked by persistent sadness. And I'm not talking about like a couple days. I'm talking about weeks to months to years of consistent sadness and depression. So this is where major depressive disorder plays a difference between actual depression. And I know it can be hard to kind of get out of that rut, right? Like, we all go through really difficult moments in our lives where we feel very sad for a long period of time. But even if you feel sad for a couple weeks, months, you may not have major depressive disorder. It kind of just really depends on what you're going through, what you're dealing with, and what you're feeling. I mean, now we kind of go into the realm of postpartum depression. For new mothers, the joy of having a baby can sometimes be overshadowed by postpartum depression. After having a child, your hormonal balances are just all over the place. And unfortunately, I don't have enough information as somebody who has gone through postpartum. I can't really speak on someone or something that I've ever felt with postpartum. But when it comes to postpartum, a lot of what I've researched and what I've learned is that these feelings are a lot like what depression is, but the bigger factor is the hormonal changes after having the child. And so a lot of mothers, what they've learned is that a lot of symptoms that pop up are like feeling like you're going to be a bad mother, feeling like you're not worthy of having this child, and you're going to put yourself in a bad position to treat the child badly. And it's not about treating the child or being a bad mother or anything other than that, but it's more about the hormonal changes. And it's important to seek help in these kind of positions and kind of get a better understanding of what you're feeling. Actually, 75% of new mothers experience the baby blues, and 15% develop postpartum depression. And so it has a really high rate of a lot of people who struggle with this. It's not something that just, again, magically goes away, but I believe if you are prepared for it and are able to handle those difficult moments, then I think you're going to set yourself up for success. And that is one of the biggest things I repeat on this podcast is, how do we set ourselves up for success? How do we put ourselves in positions where we can make sure that we do succeed in these difficult moments when we know something like this is about to happen? And I actually wanted to give you some symptoms of or thought patterns of people who do struggle with postpartum depression. So you have trouble bonding with the child and don't establish a connection with them. Your child may start having learning behaviors because when you are depressed, you kind of come into yourself and you sit with yourself and you try to heal yourself, but you're so stuck in your own head that it's really difficult to get out of this persistent sadness. And so this will cause issues only for the child as well. Your child may end up feeling neglected and not recognized, and this could impair the child's social skills. If these feelings have persisted beyond 2 weeks, they recommend to go seek help. And this help could be just speaking to a doctor and explaining to them what you're feeling and what you're dealing with, and then they could recommend a therapist or a counselor. And what I've actually also learned is that you can actually be on antidepressants while breastfeeding. Now, of course, there's a time pattern on how long or when you should be advised to take the medication and then be able to breastfeed. But it says that mothers are sometimes advised to wait 8 or 9 hours after taking antidepressants before breastfeeding. So there are answers to the feelings that you're going to feel after having a child. And so I just want to remind you, I know that it can be really hard, and I know your partner may not understand what you're going through, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to get through this, right? And to understand depression is to understand mental health. And if you can truly sit with yourself and understand that these are just chemical changes inside of you and that you will go back to normal and things will come back to as they were before having the child, you're going to start feeling a lot better when you recognize and identify all the issues that you're feeling. Some examples of these changes include like physical changes to your body, lack of sleep, worries about parenting, or changes to your relationship. It's important to, again, recognize these issues and not allow them to just kind of sit there and ruminate and just not tell your partner what you're feeling or how you're going to deal with it. Because I think that's where we all struggle with our mental health, is that we're afraid to share what we're dealing with. I always try to repeat a lot of things that I say on this podcast are repeated. So I hope that I don't sound like someone who's just on this carousel of repetitiveness. And I hope that these insights, these identifiers, this knowledge will stick with you, because if you can truly understand what you're dealing with, then you're getting that one step forward to bettering your mental health. So another type of depression is seasonal affective disorder. Now, this is also another name for it is seasonal depression, and it's something that a lot of people do actually struggle with in the northern states, or if you're in a colder environment. So if you go from a warmer season to going into a colder season and having less daylight, this is something a lot of people struggle with. And this is something that I've struggled with for a while too. Living in the state of Illinois, I've realized that when times change, and so it gets dark by 5 o'clock, and that's really hard for some people, because some people who go to work in the dark and then come out of work and they're still in the dark and there's no daylight for them, and that causes issues on their mental health. So, studies have shown that reduced serotonin levels and disrupted circadian rhythm are the contributing factors for seasonal affective disorder. So, there are some treatments for seasonal affective disorder. There's light therapy, there's psychotherapy, and sometimes you can use medication. But another thing that has been correlated to seasonal depression is the lack of vitamin D that you're getting. There hasn't been enough research or studies to compare both and to say, yes, because of vitamin D, this is why you're feeling it. But this could be something that you could address pretty easily with some vitamin D pills. And if you don't see that working, then you can try something else. I think light therapy is a really good answer to a lot of people's issues. And so with these kind of treatments, I always recommend that you focus on, how do I find what's best for me? And don't just like go out there and be like, all right, I'm going to try light therapy, I'm going to try psychotherapy, I'm going to try medication, I'm going to try all of these things. Sina told me to try all of these things all at once. I recommend just trying to figure out, take it one step at a time, because in moments of seasonal affective disorder, you're going to feel overwhelmed, right? Because in one of the symptoms of depression is irritability and feeling very overwhelmed in different places in your life, whether that could be your relationship life, that could be your work life, that could be your health life. It all just kind of depends on what you are struggling with and how you're dealing with it. But you don't have to deal with it alone. I know that in the winter, sometimes it can become really difficult to kind of understand what you're going through. And it feels like summer's never going to come and that sun is never going to shine again. And I've been there. I know how it feels like. But what I always say is one day at a time. And if you think about it, every day that passes, you're one day closer to getting that sun again, getting that nice weather again, getting focused on not being in winter. And are there going to be tough days? Of course. Are there going to be days where you don't see the sun at all? Of course. But those are the days where you really have to pay attention to your mental health. You really have to identify, what am I feeling? You know, I really think just sitting here with yourself and understanding what you're struggling with is really important. I mean, this plays such an important part in self-love, self-awareness. I was listening to a podcast episode with Jay Shetty and Zachary Levy, and he was explaining his side of depression and what he struggled with and what got him through it. And he said something that was really important and kind of clicked with me is, if you don't have self-awareness, then you don't have self-love. Because if you aren't aware of what you're dealing with and what you're struggling with, then how can you love yourself? How can you help yourself in those kind of moments where you are struggling? I think we all get into a rut of like, hey, I'm just going to continue doing work and I'm just going to run away from my emotions and I'm going to run away from my feelings because I believe that is the best answer to fixing all of these issues. And I think that's why COVID played such an important part in people to stop running away from their mental health, is because at one point you couldn't run anymore. You had to sit with your thoughts. And it's important to sit with yourself, because if you don't identify, you're never going to be able to reach that level of treatment you're looking for or feeling that you want to feel better. At one point, you will burn out. At one point, it is going to be tough. In the episode, again, they had mentioned what they were comparing mental health to like going to the dentist. And sometimes when you go to the dentist, you just go for a cleaning and there's no issues and they look over your teeth and everything seems fine. And sometimes you need a root canal. And that's when it gets really tough. But if you don't continuously keep going to the dentist, then you're going to identify issues later on when you do go, and they're going to be a lot tougher to deal with. And it's the same thing with mental health, if you think about it. Like, think, if you don't sit with yourself and figure out, like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm feeling I felt sad for the last couple of days. Is like, check in with yourself. Is everything okay? You can ask yourself, how's my mental health? And it's just a simple question that could lead to a couple answers that could lead to somewhere else. Maybe even jot down what you're feeling. Like, pull out your journal, write the date. I have felt sad for the last 3 or 4 days. Okay. And then continue. Write something else. Or leave it at that. And then come back to your journal a couple days later. Do you still feel the same? Do you still feel sad? Are you still struggling? Have you felt better? Have the days gotten better? If not, then that's something that you should address. But recognizing that is a huge step forward. And I congratulate you for identifying issues within yourself and being able to be courageous and be like, you know what? I am going to deal with this. I am going to fix this. Here's a good quote from Harvard Medical School. There are billions of chemical reactions happening in your brain at any moment. Depression is often the result of a delicate system being thrown off balance. And that is so true. If you think about it, depression happens to us when big factors, you going through a breakup, you have family issues, you just found out some bad health news, you are getting yelled at work, whatever you're dealing with, it's a huge factor that leads into being depressed. Where depression comes from, a lot of it is simply just from outside factors. You know, like, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, I'm depressed. So it's just like, that's not how it works. It's a continuous factor of something that's bugging you or bothering you and it's bringing you down. You know, like, I've had some really bad days with my depression where I just sat in bed and cried. And I just couldn't get myself to get out of bed. No matter how much I pushed myself, no matter how much I could just be like, come on, you can do this. The voice inside my head would shut that voice out and be like, no, we're going to sit in bed. We're going to feel sad. We're going to cry. I really don't want to get up. And that's what's scary. That's when you realize you're like, yo, you know, like, I do have some issues that I need to address, you know? The persistent sadness just doesn't go away if you don't figure out a way to deal with it. You know, whenever I had those bad days, I would journal. I would go for a walk, listen to a podcast. If you are on a walk listening to this podcast, I hope this is helping you make you feel a little bit better on the inside. And I hope you're enjoying your walk. But figure out ways that you can get yourself out of bed. You know, it was the hardest part is when you become disinterested. I think that's what really kills me and it's such a weird feeling. Like, I really love going to the gym, but when I'm depressed or I'm really down, like, my mind is just like, no, I don't really want to go. I'm disinterested. I don't really feel like it. Like, I can just feel it within myself just pulling me back into bed. And that's when I know that I have to go. Because if I don't, then I'm going to get sucked into this vortex of just sadness, of hopelessness, of like nothing's getting better. And it doesn't mean that it's going to last forever, right? There's ways out of your depression. There's ways to become and feel better. But I think the big factor is just recognizing it. And so let's get into some biological factors. Let's put on our scientist glasses and get what causes depression. Depression doesn't have a single cause. Again, it's outside environmental factors. But the biological factors, research shows that the areas of the brain like the amygdala, the hippocampus, play such a big role in depression. The hippocampus, for example, is often smaller in people with depression due to chronic stress. And so you also might have depression through your genetics. I have a history of depression in my family. And to be honest with you, I have always felt that through my life is that I've known that I have struggled with this mental health disorder. It has always been something that has pulled me under, but it's also something that's honestly given me so much power and given me so much strength to help and talk about. And so another thing that is a combination of factors is like stressful environments. Grief after my losing my brother, I fell into a depression for a while, and I saw my mother fall into a depression for 7 years. She had major depressive disorder, and she just struggled for years on years. And it was just, you could see it in her face, and you could see that the battle that she was going through. And I always say this is that no one is going to come and help you unless you ask for help. It's up to you to ask for help. And you listening to this, it's okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to just say, hey, I'm just struggling. Okay. And so this is where it becomes really important to how do we start the conversation? How do we talk to someone who's feeling depressed? How do we help them? So if you know someone who's struggling, here's some ways that you can help. Set aside some time to genuinely listen without distractions. And a lot of people say, Sina, what is the difference between listening and genuine listening? I want you to look this person in the eyes as they're talking to you and give them your full attention. I know my mind races, so sometimes I'm like in a billion different places, but I want you to just think about this person as a family friend or someone you truly care about and tell them like, hey, I'm here to listen to you. If you want to vent, just vent. And this is the one thing that I have at YNA Mental Health on the Instagram. I created the chat so that people can just vent. I have had multiple conversations with multiple different people who just vent to me about their lives. And I listen to them and I try to give them advice and I try to help them. But they are the ones who have to dig themselves out of their hole. They have to be the one who treat themselves. I can't just give you medication. I can't just give you a therapist. You have to put your mental health first. Sometimes, and this is a really good quote, sometimes the best thing you can do for someone with depression is just simply be there. Listen to them. Avoid using words like, just cheer up. You're going to get over this. You don't struggle with depression. You're fine. Come on, let's go do something. Let's get your mind off of this. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just kind of getting someone distracted, but I believe there's a time and a place for everything. I think encouraging them to seek professional help or just have somebody or just do the research for them. Be like, hey, I found this couple therapists in the area. If you want, I can call them for you and I can get their information and then you can try to get an appointment with them. But I want to help you. I think when we genuinely show up for people, when we genuinely care for people, when we listen to them, you don't understand how much of a major factor that plays for people. You don't understand how important it truly is to actually figure out a way to help them. I find it so fulfilling when people message me on Instagram and just vent to me. And then afterwards are just like, thank you. Like I had checked up on somebody on Instagram, and I said, they messaged me, we vented, and then I messaged him afterwards, and he was like, "Wow, thank you. Like I didn't think anybody would check in with me, but you did." And I try to check in with my friends. I try to have weekly check-ins with them. See, these are small things that you can do as somebody who maybe not struggle with a mental health disorder, but this is what you can do to help these people who do struggle. I think it's better to pay attention to the symptoms now than if something were to happen and you attack yourself or say horrible things to yourself, like, why couldn't I be there for them? Why couldn't they talk to me? When all it takes is just saying, how's your mental health? And I think that plays such an important factor into just helping people. Now, I do want to jump into coping mechanisms and treatments to kind of give you a better understanding of, like, okay, Sina, I understand what depression is. I see the symptoms. I see the different types. I see how to talk to someone if I'm struggling or if they're struggling, how I talk to them. But Sina, how do I help them? How do I give them coping mechanisms and treatments? So let's start with this. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, there are effective treatments available. For example, therapy has a 75% success rate according to the American Psychology Association. So there's help and there's treatment for you. Now, let's focus on coping mechanisms before we jump into psychotherapy and medication. So there's different types of coping strategies. Problem-focused coping, addressing the root cause of your stress. For example, finding a healthier job if work is overwhelming you. I think that's really important. Find the root cause of the problem. If your stress is coming from your relationship or from your job, or if it's something that you can figure out a way to help or work out, maybe this is a change that you make. If your job is depressing you for days on days, for weeks on end, for months, and an environment that is not making you feel better, I know it's easier said than done to just be like, "Oh yes, I can just quit my job and find a new one in this difficult economy." And I get that. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you to quit your job, but if you are feeling this overwhelmed, what's an issue of just looking and applying? You know, it's not going to hurt you to apply. It's not going to hurt you to look at other jobs. It's not going to hurt you to text a friend and be like, "Hey, like, I haven't felt really good about my job recently, and I just wondering, like, how do you like yours? Is there any openings at your place?" Like, I know plenty of friends that I could text if I ever felt like I need to switch my job, if just asking them for information. There's nothing wrong with asking for information. I believe it's a great step forward to conquering what you're dealing with. On to the next. Emotion-focused coping. Accepting and processing your feelings. Example would be journaling or talking to a friend. These emotions inside of us need to be released. And if you don't find a way to release them, they will release themselves and project in so many different ways. I've had plenty of times where I've projected my depression onto others when if I would have just addressed it, if I would have just accepted and processed that I was feeling this way, then I could have helped and not destroyed friendships or not yelled at someone or not hurt someone or not say something to somebody that's actually just going to make things worse. So, next coping is social coping, leaning on friends, family, or support group. Now, you know what? I've had plenty of people tell me, like, I don't have the friends to lean on, or my family is unhealthy and they're very toxic. Okay, let's put that aside. Leaning on friends and family, we'll put that aside. If you don't have the friends, if you don't have the family, okay, what do we do, Sina? How do we find a way to socially cope? I think a great way, and I know this is going to be kind of weird, but support groups. On Facebook, you can join many different groups. And I don't think there's anything wrong with joining a group that has a conversation about depression. When I feel like we read other people's stories, we find a way to connect with them. And if you read someone's story, maybe you will connect and be like, you know what, what that person's dealing with is exactly what I'm dealing with. And there's nothing wrong with messaging them and being like, "Hey, your story was wonderful. I'm struggling with the same thing. Do you have any ways of helping?" And it's a great way to just connect with someone. There's ways we have online now, and there's ways to help yourself. I get it. A lot of us don't have friends. I get it that some of us come from toxic families and we can't lean on our parents or we can't lean on our siblings. But there's other people who are struggling with what you're struggling with. Like this whole podcast is about, you're not alone. You know, you're not alone with your depression. And I've been alone with my depression before, and it's terrifying. It's truly terrifying. But I know that if I can just talk to someone, if I can just process my feelings, if I can just address the root cause of my stress, then I can find a way to help myself and to get myself to take the right step forward. So let's go into the next level of treatments. So, psychotherapy. Talking with a licensed therapist, of course, is one of my favorite ways. I've been going to therapy for a really long time. I work for a private practice. Therapy has been in my life for a very long time. I don't force therapy onto anyone. I don't push anyone to go to therapy. All I'm saying is it's a great way of getting yourself the help that you need. Another way is medication. Antidepressants can really help regulate the brain chemicals that you're struggling with, like serotonin. There's good medication out there that can help you. There are good stories of people that have taken medication and it's helped them. There's also bad stories of people who have taken medication and it's not worked for them. But do the research. Talk to your doctor. Figure out what's right for you. I've heard from both that using therapy and medication has really helped. I've heard from both that I just go to therapy and it's helped. I've heard that I just do use medication and it's helped. You can find a way to better your mental health. There's treatment out there for you. And one of the biggest ones that I personally think, it doesn't overshadow therapy or medication, but I think it's huge into getting yourself in a constant place to becoming better. And that's lifestyle changes, regular exercise, healthy eating, and mindfulness practices can improve these symptoms of depression. And mindfulness is truly overlooked. Meditation and mindfulness are very important. I actually have an episode on it where I talk to a yoga teacher. His name is Joe, and he explains mindfulness and meditation. I highly recommend you check out that episode. Okay, so going to therapy felt scary at first, but it can become a safe place. It doesn't solve everything, but it will give you the tools to cope. So let me ask you this. Therapy has a 75% success rate. And I know I have a lot of friends who say therapy doesn't work for me, and that's okay. But what if you just gave it a try? What if you put your mental health first? What if you tried multiple different things and it hasn't worked? What if it works for you? What if you find a therapist that you connect with? I know the voice in your head is probably telling you no. And so that's what's the problem. You're getting in your own way, and I need you to stop. I need you to focus and identify what's going on. Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. If you need to sit with your thoughts, that's fine. Let's get you the help you need. You don't need to struggle. And I hope that this episode will continue to just shine a light on what you're struggling with. So now, coming to the end, the recovery and hope. Recovering from depression is possible, but it takes time, consistency, and effort. The brain has an incredible ability to heal when you treat it effectively. It's up to you. At the end of my relationship, I remember somebody telling me that no one's going to come to save you. And that's okay, because you don't need anyone to come and save you. You've got yourself. You are capable enough to recover. You are capable enough to not fix, but to treat your depression. I've struggled with depression all my life, and I know what you feel, and I know sometimes it can be really hard, and I know that life can really bring you down, and man, does it suck. I completely understand the level of suck, but I was the one who had to tell myself, you need help. As much as all the voices around me were telling me, yeah, you need it, go get it, blah, blah, blah. It was up to me to take the final step to get the help that I need. It is up to you to put your mental health as a priority. And I'm here to help you. I'm not here to save you. I'm here to educate you, give you the information that you need, and I'm here for you to lean on. I know that I might just be some voice with a microphone, but I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I am telling you that if you need somebody and you are struggling, that is what YNA Mental Health is here for. That is why I created this platform, to help others, because I understand what it feels like to struggle alone and to be with this mental health disorder. And you don't need to do that anymore. Don't you worry. A really good quote from Helen Keller. Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. And that is so true. You can get through this, and you will get through this, and you will overcome everything that you've struggled with. So, recovery, it isn't linear. There will be setbacks, but every step forward, you get to reclaim a piece of yourself. And I can't wait to see the whole you, because you're a beautiful person. You're putting your mental health as a priority. I know depression can be hard, but I really, truly am thankful for you joining me in this deep dive in this conversation. If this episode resonated with you, or if you really felt like we connected, please share this. The only way that the podcast can grow is by you sharing it. And it means the world to me when I hear others tell me how much I've helped them. So if I've helped you, please, I would love a message just to hear about your story, what you struggled with, and how much better you are now, and how much in a better place you are. And if you're not, that's okay. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you know someone in crisis, please, 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 please remind them that they are not alone and they're going to get through this. Take care of yourselves, and I'll check you next time. Bye.